3.5, almost 4 years ago, when I started this podcast, I had no idea where I wanted to go with it. Truth be told, I still don't. I had this short list of dream guests, people that I wanted to have conversations with. I wanted to talk to somebody from Story of the Year. Check, it happened. I wanted to talk to Steve from The Urge, one of my favorite bands as a late teen, early 20-year-old. Check. I wanted to talk to Ryan Key from Yellowcard. Check. But my next guest was one that I really wanted to sit down and go in depth with. You'll hear in the introduction of this episode a very crazy fan story. I couldn't have made it up if I tried. Anberlin has been one of my favorite bands since 2005. And it's not only because of the deep meaning within their songs, it's because of the core memories that they created within my heart. It was the soundtrack of the years where I became a dad for the first time. So this episode of Caught on the Mic is really special to me personally. I welcome Stephen Christian from Anberlin to the show. The band itself took a hiatus in 2014, and then they came back a few years later. Stephen himself personally just recently took a hiatus from the band as they moved forward with a different singer, and his blessing. His rationale and his reasoning should be nothing short of inspiring, and I know you're really going to enjoy this episode. So, without further ado, Stephen Christian of Anberlin joins me on Caught on the Mic today. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. Okay, so here is a little bit of an unconventional start to a Caught on the Mic episode. I'm going to take everybody back in the Wayback Machine, the time machine, 2005. I'm headed down to Kansas City, Missouri to see a concert. I'm going to see Story of the Year, Anberlin, and Funeral for a Friend. The show was fantastic. I was really just kind of familiar with Anberlin at the time, but that show made me a fan. I tell you without any hesitancy, and I know this is going to sound like a far-fetched story, but this is probably one of the top 2 fan experiences I've had in my life as both a musician myself and as a music fan. We leave the venue, we're walking around Kansas City, and who do I see standing outside? It's the lead singer of Anberlin, Stephen Christian. We stand there for about half an hour, 20 minutes, just kind of swapping stories, talking a little bit about where they had been the year prior, things like the Nintendo Fusion Tour, I believe, and some of the other things that they had going on. So that moment kind of unlocked a core memory for me. 6 months later, Anberlin is doing a headlining show in my hometown, Omaha, Nebraska. It's with Joan Zeta, Emery, and I believe the Classic Crime. And who do I see before the show starts? And he kind of points at me, and I kind of point at him, and I doubt he'll even remember this, but he remembered me from that night in Kansas City. And that has stuck with me for darn near 20 years. An experience that I will never forget. And I will tell you that A Day Late and Paper Thin Hymn have very, very deep core memories associated with my life and where I was in life at that point in time. And I am very proud to welcome Stephen Christian, lead singer of Anberlin, anchor of Braille, and pastor at Grace Family Church. Stephen, thanks for joining Caught on the Mic, man.
I love it. Thank you so much, man. I thought it means a lot to be here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. And that's Man, that's a blast of the past. Just I remember those tours, those shows. That was a great time. So I'm ecstatic to be here.
Man, I tell you what, I don't know how I have such photographic memory that I can tell you lineups like that.
That's awesome. No, I'm impressed. And you should have quizzed me, like, who were you touring with? And I've been like, oh, dude, I'll take some wild stabs in the dark. But that's awesome.
Man, well, thank you for doing the show and taking the time out, because I know you're a pretty busy guy. A lot of ground to cover in a short period of time. I don't want to take up too much of your afternoon, but I do want to start off by saying thank you for that moment, and thank you for all the great artwork over the years. It's something that my friends and I still text each other about and say, hey man, I've just listened to the song and I haven't listened to it forever. It made me think of you, like some of my past bandmates and such. And so I really appreciate it, man, for real.
It's my pleasure and privilege, man. I look back at those years with the most fondness. I feel so lucky. I feel so blessed to be able to have been a part of that, been just in that moment, that movement. It was all pretty incredible, man. So I look back with the greatest, most fondest of memories.
So let's kind of talk a little bit about kind of your origin story, how you came into Anberlin, and kind of what got you to that point. Where did you start as a music fan to becoming a musician yourself? And, that big bubble that was going on in 2005 and slightly beyond.
Yeah. I didn't grow up with many friends. We moved around a lot when I was a kid, 12 cities in 12 years, 12 different schools. It was pretty brutal. And so for me, music was the escape. I would listen to bands like the Smiths, and even though that was kind of beyond my era, I would listen back, and I really connected with Morrissey, and any of those kind of loners. I mean, so Nico from Velvet Underground, Jeff Buckley, just like these, not the normal vocals or, The Cure and all this. Well, obviously when I heard punk rock, I gravitated to it pretty quickly, simply because, it felt like it was the summation of who I felt I was, just kind of on the outside, always constantly looking in. And so gravitated towards, like the poster behind you, The Clash, Rancid, Misfits, all of that kind of just propelled me into, kind of the new gen of punk rock, which, was kind of like the Green Day, the Face to Face, bands like that. So from there, I had a lot of friends, that were heavily involved in music. And so I'd start showing up to shows, local shows at Friar Tuck's in Winter Haven, Florida. And if we were feeling adventurous, Lakeland, Florida, listening to bands like Syrup and, a bunch of bands like that. So it became a social life for me more than like, when I grew up, I want to be a musician. It was never like that. It was more just kind of like proximity to friendships always included, a show on Friday night or Saturday night. So my brother and I would, jump into the car, or, friends' cars, and just kind of go. I know sometimes we'd head to Orlando or Tampa if the parents would let us, to go see shows over there. And so that's kind of where the whole thing started. It was just more out of like proxy to a social life, never like the ultimate dream or goal. So that's honestly the roots of it. A lot of little clubs, in the area that would allow for bands like, like that in that scene, metal or bands or something like that. So we became familiar with those people, that kind of ran the clubs or at least put on the shows, the promoters and stuff like that. And then, so from there, started a punk rock band with Dion Rexroad and Joey Milligan and Nate Young. And those guys would eventually form Anberlin. And so in 2002, 2002, sorry. And then in 2003, kind of put out our first record there with Tooth and Nail in 2003.
Man, that's amazing. The moment where you said you moved around a lot as a kid, I was the same way. I was always the new kid in school. Every 2 to 4 years, we were moving around. And it was the same exact thing. It was connecting with people through either music or martial arts. And because it was an easy vessel to socialize and find my identity, And you were talking about some of those bands. I have this playlist that I created on Spotify where it's called Yeah, I Get It, I'm Weird. And it's like, it's got The Cure, it's got The Smiths, it's got When in Rome, a band that you guys have covered, Depeche Mode, another band you guys have covered. So I love the fact that you and I have this very similar kinship, and maybe that's, that kind of bleeds through some of your art sometimes, and maybe that's where people make those correct connections. So we talked about 2005, and I think about what I consider the MySpace era of 2005 to 2009 and that genre of music blowing up. From the moment that Never Take Friendship Personal blew up to everything that kind of came after, it came really fast, didn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like just feel like kind of getting onto a raft going just downstream. You're just holding on. You're just kind of trying to navigate the waters. I think we did good. I mean, I think we did very well in some areas, and I think we did horrific in other areas. But you didn't have time to even collect your thoughts. You were just moving down the stream. So yeah, that was an era.
For you, what was the high point of that era?
Man, so many things. I think the number one feeling, number one that I walked away with, I think the high point was having a place to belong. I think like you just hit it. You said something to the effect of, hey, I think a little bit of your music kind of holds that childhood. I always wanted to be in a gang. Even at 12 and 13 to 14 years old, I thought for sure I was going to go to West Point Military School. Not because I was like super into guns or violence or war, but more because I always wanted that. I always missed out. Even today, like there's a native New Zealand dance, and the haka. I don't know. I'm not even sure if I'm saying it right, but if you want me to cry, just let me watch that, because that encapsulated everything I wanted out of a childhood. And just a sense of belonging. And I think like that period of time, 2004 to 2009, was the most innocent years, naive years, the most collective we were as a band and as a unit. Finally having friends. I have a friend named Murray Byrne, and he once told me, he said, I can't be friends with a man unless he has a little pain in his eyes. And I think that I finally found a group of people with pain in their eyes. I'm not sure if you could sing some of the lyrics or even enjoy punk rock or Morrissey if you didn't have some sort of traumatic experience in your childhood. So that all kind of culminated into those years. And I think the pinnacle being Never Take Friendship Personal for me, as far as maybe not the best record. I'm not saying that, but it was the best era of any of our records. Just again, very like just, exploring the world for the first time, really finding myself, finding my people, all of that kind of culminated around Never Take Friendship Personal.
Yeah, I get that, because a lot of the people that I talk to, specifically creatives in general, and having my own creative experience and releasing albums myself, you kind of have this point where it's an inflection point where that you're making the art for yourself, and it kind of flips a switch in you internally, and I am doing this. I am doing the right thing for myself. And I think a lot of artists get a little further down the line to where they start questioning their sense of sincerity in the art that you're doing and the art that you're putting out. And I would imagine, with as much as you guys put out in such a short period of time, because I was going through the discography and I'm like, I never really thought about it, but Anberlin churned out a lot of stuff in a really short window of time. That had to have been conflicting from time to time as well.
Oh, 100%. What you got to remember that, like, again, we never were promised tomorrow. We had no clue if the band was even going to be, or the genre was going to be, or the music. And so for us, it was like, quick, while people still care. That was kind of the logic. But as far as like lyrically, yeah, I think it was definitely taxing. They say you have your entire life to write your first record. And I love that, because that's absolutely true. But from there, life becomes very much cyclical, as far as like you get into the van, you show up to the venue, you unload, you play a show, you get back into the van, you know what I'm saying? Like it just becomes, and so or I would say around Never Take Friendship, New Surrender, I was just like, I was going through a mental chaos because here my record label was saying, hey, if this record fails, it's your fault, Stephen. So you've got to make sure that this is the best record you've ever put out. And then part of me was like, well, I want to appeal to the masses. But then I said, well, everything that got me here was very, very much the opposite. And so it was very much a conflicted record all the way through for me. And from that point on, I was like starving to for topics of songs. I could write you a song about anything, a cup, to social justice issue. I don't care, but I've got to believe in that topic. And so, as a band grows and gets older, and not just like age as in like how old the members are, but like age of the band, like you have so many experiences, like you're just kind of like looking and dredging for topics. And I always told my friends, I was like, don't tell me too much, man, because you are going to find yourself in a song because you're going to just want to stay away at some point. Like, don't tell me if you don't want it to end up on a record.
Oh my goodness. That is the same exact experience that I had in the last project that I did. Churned out 2 albums, no problem. Band goes to write the 3rd album, and I'm not even listening to music in the genre that we were playing by that point in time.
Oh, yeah.
Where I was just like a creative desert. Like I had writer's block in the worst way possible. And I'm sure you're a very similar way. I am my own worst critic. All the bandmates were like, man, yeah, that's good. And it's like, well, it's not good enough for me. It's not making the statement that I want to make.
Yeah.
So I totally get that, man. Holy cow. Oh, man. So 2014, you guys take your first hiatus. And one of the things that I really respected about that is you made no secret of the fact that it had to do with stations outside of life in music. So going into that first hiatus, where was your mindset? And this was shortly after, was it after New Surrender that had happened?
No, it was New Surrender came out in 2009. And
No. So was Lowborn?
Yeah, Lowborn was our last record. That came out in 2014.
That's right. 14, that's right.
So,
That's right.
It was 2013, and I was playing a show in London, England, and I was, before the show, you could walk around. I mean, it's London. You would probably want to go see that. We had been a few times, but I'm just sitting there, and I'm staring at the ceiling in my hotel room midday, and I'm just thinking to myself, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be anywhere remotely here. I want to just be home. I want to be where my kids are and where my wife is. And that was more the impetus to where I just, and that night was the night I just told them. I told the guys, I was like, hey, I'm going to give you one more year of my life. And so I can set you up to win financially. But after that, man, I want to go home. And it was so hard of a decision because on one hand, I had worked so hard to get to this moment, internationally recognized, major label. I mean, go down the list of every dream that some little kid could have had or thought of, or, the wildest dreams, the money, the success, the notoriety, the fame, the people, finally had my group. I had it all, like all of it. And yet, the most valuable people, the most valuable cultivating I've ever experienced, I couldn't share any of it with. And it just was killing me. I mean, it was definitely like a wrestling match internally, but it just like, why have the quantity of life when you didn't have the quality of life?
Yes.
To that point, I had missed my grandfather's funeral and weddings and funerals and graduations and birthdays and my kids' first steps and first words. And all of it was just kind of like, what are we doing this for? There was nothing. I felt like I had done it all in the music realm. There, at some point, like it was becoming my paycheck, but definitely not my passion. And so I felt like anything after that, as far as like if we had stayed a professional band after 2014, I felt like it was just for show. It was just for a paycheck, and in no way was there any passion attached to it. It would have been just phoning it in. And I think that people see through that. And it just didn't feel like that's where I wanted to be at that moment. And so it was tough. I mean, it definitely severed a lot of relationships internally in the band. I mean, all of them, but I knew that I was making the right decision long term. Yeah. No offense, Mike. I appreciate you. We've met more than once, but you're not going to be there on my deathbed. And so I can't, I can't do this for you. And it's got to be what matters most. To me, that was obviously my faith that goes, anywhere, but it was for my family and my close friends. That's what it was all about, and so that's kind of that led up to the decision. But it was an exhausting, grueling 2014. And, when I played the last show at House of Blues, and we could have played a much bigger venue just because it was our last show, but it was very cyclical for me. That's kind of where Anberlin all started, was at that House of Blues. And so as I laid there crumpled on the ground, I believe that some people in the audience probably was like, wow, what a good show, what a showman. But it wasn't, man. I was exhausted. I was mentally, physically, socially, spiritually, all of it, just exhausted. And as I lay there crumpled on the floor, I literally, if everybody just was quiet, I probably could have slept for like a solid 12 hours at that moment. That's how just gone I was. So it was exhausting. But I think it was that moment was a culmination of like years just building up to that moment.
Man, that honesty and transparency, I think more people need to have conversations like this because they're going to find a lot more commonalities. How did your band members take it immediately? Because I know when I walked away, it was the same exact reasons. I was right about to walk into a rehearsal, and it was a guitarist, a bass player, and myself. I was the vocalist. And I sat in the car and I said pretty much exactly, almost verbatim, what you just told me. I was like, it is time for me to give this portion of my life to my family and to my loved ones and reprioritize everything.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was, as I looked in the back seat where my bass player was sitting, and it's like this sense of relief just washed over his face. And the guitarist who was in the driver's seat, he was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're the one that said it.
Wow.
It was like, well, three of us came to the same conclusion, and then we went in and to the rehearsal space and talked to the drummer and the other guitarist who didn't take it quite as well.
Right.
So how did that conversation go for you?
Not great, but I knew that, when I told them, number one, I did have the sense of relief like you're talking about. It was just like, telling them the truth. But I think that a lot of them expected it. They just didn't know when. It could have been that, it could have been that week, or it could have been 2 years later. They just knew that it was coming soon. But on top of that, I mean, just sad. Like the fact is, we worked this hard. We were 17, 18 years old when we started in this journey. And so to leave like almost like when there was still money on the table and tours being offered and, all this stuff. And I look at bands like a Taking Back Sunday or Seos Center, all these people that have kind of have kept it going. Even Emery has done a great job of kind of rebranding and recalibrating. And Bayside is hitting some of the biggest numbers of their career just in the last 3 years, Right. And so I look at bands like that, and I think that in their eyes, they saw, man, that's what we could have become, or that's what we're still not done. It's so early. There's more to do. And I didn't feel that same way. And so I think, so a lot of frustration, a lot of heartbreak, and I don't think I'm not sure if the guys would mind me saying this or not. But when we broke up and we played that last show in 2014, I don't think I talked to the guys for at least 3 to 4 years. And a lot of that was just, number one, I was not great to be on tour with that last year. I wasn't a prima donna. I didn't fight. We didn't yell. There was no yelling. I was just emotionally unavailable. I was just stoic, and I showed up on time. I was there. I put on what I felt like is the best performance. I definitely, every show I gave 110. There's no way you could tell me I gave 1% less at any show. So it wasn't, no one argued, no one fought, but I definitely was like slowly recoiling out of the situation, and so I had to call them, later on I believe it was like 2019 or 18, right around there, and 18, and just say, hey, I need to apologize for that last year. I need to apologize for my part in this. I could have done better to be your friend, or maybe at least been a sounding block, or I could have been better. I could have been emotionally available, and so that's on me. The friendships were absolutely strained, and I don't think that it'll ever be what it was at Never Take Friendship Personal era, the friendships. But at the end of the day, I had to do what's best for my family, and I'm sure if they were in my predicament, hopefully they would have done the same thing. They didn't have kids, several more married, so it's really hard to explain children to someone who has never had one. You can't say, hey, you empathize, like first words are a big deal. First steps are a big deal. I remember when I had my second child, we were on the road within 2 weeks, and within 2 months, she was on the road with me. And so that's really hard for a parent to be without their child, and especially the early years and the early days and I believe I was truly desired. I think if I had a superhero power, it's just being an incredible dad. That's not to boast as brag. Everybody has something. And I just love being a dad. Like, I love it. So
Same. That was
really, really hard for me. And maybe other members are not. That's not their special superhero. And I'm not judging. I mean, everybody says what they're good at. But that's just what I wanted to be. Growing up, I wanted to be a dad. So that was really tough.
Again, it's so many commonalities between the two of us here. Do you think that your sense of strength surrounding your family comes from a combination of moving around as much as you did as a kid and reestablishing new relationships in new towns constantly? And a little known fact that not a lot of people know about you, you have a degree in psychology as well, don't you?
But just an undergrad, which is just basically rote learning. I don't do, outside of like pastoral counseling, I wouldn't know what to do in a counseling session. So,
but the short and skinny is like, from your purview, like being able to prioritize that sense of family is probably a lot different than, because I'm cut from the same cloth, like I said, than a lot of other creatives, because they don't look at things that directly, or if I'm making sense at all, because I know I'm a child of divorce as well. So my whole thing with my kids is like, I do not want to repeat the same mistakes of my parents. So kids are 110% priority number one.
Yeah. A lot, I would agree with a lot of that. I think when you're a kid, if you grew up very poor, there's that child that says, I will never be poor. And if you're from a divorced family, I will never get a divorce. And if you're and so I have a great relationship with my dad. He's like my best friend, one of my best friends. We talk almost, twice, 3 times a week. But growing up, I didn't have a dad. He was always traveling. He was always gone. So I think that was also one of those thoughts in England when I was there in London, is just going, oh my gosh, I'm my dad. I'm saying I'm doing this because I'm providing. That's the word. I'm providing for my family. I could provide by taking out the trash and being a trash man or a maintenance man or a lawyer. There's so many other ways to provide than leaving. And so I'm slowly watching as I'm becoming my dad. Because as a child, I was just like, I will never leave my kids. I don't want to, I'm going to prioritize. So I think there's just a lot of culminations in that. I think, but definitely was a kick of, hey, I want to be, as hopefully all parents say, I want to be a better parent to my children than my parents were to me. And that's kind of the knee-jerk reaction of flipping of just maybe it's the pendulum. Maybe there could have been balance. I think we tried for balance within Anberlin, but it never happened. We were all in all the time. There's no way that band could have said, we're going to tour 4 months and then not. I think now if we could go back with the knowledge and know-how of touring now, absolutely we could have solved that riddle. If we all had kids, if we all had, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, we all decided like, hey, the long-term, this is what that, you know, I was always jealous of my friends in Nashville that were, you know, in Christian bands and country bands where they had the weekend warrior stuff.
Yeah.
You know, they were home Monday morning, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. They left at midnight. They were gone Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They were home by midnight. Like midnight on Monday morning. So, but we were, that was not who Anberlin was. Anberlin was a 7, 8, 9 month a year touring machine. If we weren't touring, we were recording. You know, if we weren't recording, we were doing podcasts or interviews or, you know, there's something. We never turned off. It wasn't like that. And I think that caught up to my wife, that caught up to my kids, that caught up to my mental health. All of it was just that, you know, it just took a toll.
It's crazy because if you look at a lot of the bands from that era, they are kind of adopting this micro tour weekend warrior model. I know I had a really great conversation with Adam Russell from Story of the Year about it, about how the obligation of touring isn't as heavy as it used to be, and more so in the past 2 and 3 years, but it's still pretty heavy. It's still a commitment regardless. So Anberlin, or your position in Anberlin as it stands right now, is this a permanent hiatus or have you completely left the band? What is that status as of 2023, 2024?
Mike, I don't know. I truly don't know. I would love to say,
respect.
Yeah, I'll be back. I don't know. I mean, I can't. I learned in 2014 when I said, I will never take the stage again. That was the dumbest remark I could possibly make, you know, because since then, you obviously we've toured and put out a record. And so I can't discount it. But what I can say is right now, today, I am so happy. I am so content. Life is so rich and thick. Today I'm going to say I'm super happy with the moment I woke up and made breakfast for my kids, feet away, to when I dropped them off at school, to when I went to go I saw one of my daughters had a play this morning, took her out to lunch, to breakfast with my mom and dad, my in-laws, my sister-in-law. We all, all of us kind of just at breakfast. Then I went off to work, hung out with the staff. It was so fun. Had a great time. Got to come home early, took off early so I could be on this podcast. Then I'm going to go to Ribs with some friends right after you say goodbye. I'm going, Ribs, spend the early evening with the family, tuck them into bed. Today, I mean, come on, man. And then tomorrow waking up for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm literally like, I don't touch my life. It's so, I heard somebody once say like, don't mess with happy. And right now I am so content and I love, got to hang out with Christian 2 days ago. We recorded something for a project we were working on. And I love Maddie Mullins. I love everybody involved in this. And when they tell me they're touring, I can safely say there is 0% jealousy or coveting or bummed or like, oh man, I'm looking at the list of their, all these dates. And in no way I'm going, oh, I made a bad decision. I'm like, dude, praise God, go at it, guys. Like, I was stoked. That is the most touring we have done since 2000. Like, Anberlin will tour more than this year than we did since 2014. And I could not be more ecstatic for those guys. I
absolutely love that. Something I value is self-preservation, self-care, and being able to, I like the analogy that I like using frequently is the mask in the airplane analogy. That is, if you're in an airplane, they always tell you to put the face mask on yourself first before you put it on any of your kids. Because here's the thing. You cannot be a good parent if you are not taking care of yourself. And it sounds like you're doing that. And I absolutely love that. And I respect everything that you are doing for yourself. Speaking of which, that's a great segue to talk about your foray into...
I threw that in for you. That's
a great segue to talk about your foray into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. When did you find that? And how did you find it?
So, I mean, like my two brothers, Paul and Tim, they've been doing it for almost like, or one of them's doing it for like 8 years and the other one's been doing it for 5. And they've always tried to get me into it. Oh man, you're going to love it. Trust me, it's the best. And then, you know, I had a good friend, Alex Corrales. He's just a phenomenal dude. And he, when we met, honestly, about 2.5 years ago, we're in a small group together. And then maybe 3 years now. And then, you know, he was ex-MMA, been training in jiu-jitsu and as well as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA in Oregon for like 16 years, won tons of belts and all that stuff. He's been trying to get me into it. And then one day, you know, I'm watching like Jorge Masvidal fight, and I'm a huge fan. I think he's so fun. He's got the personality and the skills to back it up. And just how willing he is, and just, I don't know, just the whole thing, the whole persona, and just so, I mean, I know he doesn't sound humble, but when it comes to like showing the due respect of the people he used to show respect to, he's just got it. You know what I'm saying? Knows the game, all of it. And I was just like, dude, I want to try it. And so I want to say about 5 months ago now, I called Alex and I was like, all right, Alex, like if you're serious about like training, I'd love to train. And he's like, I'm in, let me coach. So him and this guy named Sage, who Alex kind of trained up, they're kind of leading up, spearheading a few guys. And it's not big. It's like 6 of us, and we just train every Tuesday and Thursday at 5:30 a.m. And, you know, I wanted a goal. I'm not good at just kind of like, you know, meandering through life. I've got to have a goal. And so in June, I signed up for a tournament. So I'm fighting my first jiu-jitsu tournament in June. And I'm not going in there like, I'm going to crush dudes. But what I'm going to say is like, I want that feeling of like that moment when you're about to jump out of an airplane and skydive, that fear. I want to feel that. I want to feel like that tension in the room of just kind of like, okay, here we go. And so that's why I'm doing it. If I win, that's awesome. You know, it'll impress the wife. And if not, you know, I'll just be like, better not luck next time. And I learned a lot. So I'm gonna go at it.
Yeah. If you don't win, you just have to add one more day a week of training until the next tournament.
Absolutely. You know,
there's something enriching about starting your day, having like something hard to do to start your day and overcoming that.
Man, I'm big into that. Yep. If I'm not training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I'm in the gym Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I'm not trying to get like big, or I'm not trying to like, you know, bulk up. I just do it because like I heard a general once say, he did this whole, and I'm sure you can just Google it, but it's basically this general just said, make your bed. And he was not talking, and he's like, every morning, make your bed. You'll win if you make your bed. And it was a great, I highly recommend going and Googling the whole like message about it. But he wasn't physically talking about making your bed. Yes, that's a part of it. But he's more talking about the domino effect of making your day start out with something tough or something that you're going to be consistently doing every single day. And that really just got into my psyche of just kind of like, you know what? Like I want to be more self-disciplined.
Yes.
I want to do something every day. So my wife hates it. She hates everything about everything I do is because it's 5:30 a.m. and I wake her up every day. But she understands that self-discipline takes work. And it's something like is almost the complete opposite of being in a band, which is just a Peter Pan life. You know, you are living this alternate Neverland universe. Wake up when you feel like it, go to bed when you feel like it, drink what you want, hang out with people you want, like anybody you want. It's just this whole lifestyle of just self-centeredness and just me. And there was no, you know, any self-discipline. You know, when I would find guys that are self-disciplined, I would absolutely gravitate towards them. Sean Mackin from Yellow Card is so self-disciplined. Ryan from Story of the Year, just the amount of time that he would spend just doing scales. And you're just kind of thinking like, dude, you've made it. You've sold millions of records. Your #1 song in America. And I'm watching him backstage and he's just for over an hour just scaling and learning from these guys on YouTube. So, I mean, I just gravitate anybody that's like that. That's just like, there's more to life than this band, you know, and there's deeper priorities and I'm going to be the best. Whether I turn out to be the best or not, it doesn't matter. I'm aiming to be that guy. I want to be that guy. So Anthony Ranieri, always working on projects, always, you know, I've got 5 things in the pot. I'm doing it at the same time. I'm going to go try them all. I'm going to figure this out. You know, life is a puzzle and I'm going to crush it. I'm going to figure out how to make the most of what God gave me right here. Love that.
Yes. 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 I think that speech that you were talking about with the general is kind of the whole philosophy of win the morning, win the day.
Yeah.
Is that whole thing. And so you mentioned Ryan from Story of the Year, something that not a lot of people have noticed. And I know the band has never really promoted, but he actually did an episode of American Ninja Warrior. So you want to talk about people that are really disciplined. And I know I haven't always been this way myself, but I too tend to gravitate towards people that do set up a discipline for themselves, challenge themselves early in the day, and are constantly looking towards that light of betterment and everyday betterment, 1% improvement every day. Book that I got into this last year. Gosh, what was it? It's it's all about improving yourself and being in that whole 1% improvement. It's right at the top of my tongue. I probably could have preached it 10 minutes ago, but regardless, it's one of those things where you kind of become involved with these processes and making these improvements all the time.
Yeah. And I get prone to going into spirals. I don't want to call it depression because that kind of takes away the weight of the word for those who are dealing with depression. So I don't want to do that. But I definitely spiral. And sometimes I'll get into my own head and that becomes a trap. And then I just don't put one foot in front of the next. So I would say if there's anybody out there dealing with spiraling or depression, just try it. Try waking up early and eating healthy. And I know that sounds like, that's stereo meathead talk. And it's not. It's not even self-discipline. We're not trying to be Navy SEALs. I'm not trying to be a tough guy. I'm not trying to be man's man. It's not about that. It's about setting myself up to win. And if I can just win today, and if I can just set up Stephen up 5 years from now, and 10 years from now, and 15 years from now to win, that is huge. And so if you I call it like stacking days. Like if you can just stack days. My friend JT Corrales, this is awesome. I'm talking about the whole Corrales family. But my friend JT Corrales said, take a calendar, and if you can just check 4 out of the 7 days of the week, you won. And whatever that is for you, is that eating healthier? Is that working out? Is that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Is that reading a book? Like, go and stack days. So when you look back on life, it's not just a waste. It's like, man, I feel healthier today because of what I did yesterday. I'm more well-read, or I've got a better opportunity in life. And I don't think college has as much weight as it did for my dad or his, whatever. But what I will tell my kids to do is like, go and do it for you. Do it because it's more of like, it'll open up opportunities, but it's more of saying, if I put my hand to something, like if I put my head and my hand to something and I achieve it, I accomplish it, it's just more just kind of like, I did it. I won. I know what the feeling of victory is to graduate high school, graduate college, or whatever it is for you as an individual, but stack wins, and that's what it's about. So it's, that's where I'm at right now in life.
Yes. I just remember that book, by the way. It was Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were talking about.
Yes. I listened to that. Over Christmas time and through January this year. And I kind of set up a goal for myself. I'm like, okay, I let the COVID weight and the COVID fitness plan maybe get a little bit away from me over the last 4 years. So it's time to get disciplined again. And since February, I've been in the gym pretty much 4 or 5 days a week. And it's exactly what you say. It's like stacking those little goals. And, it is not about a meathead thing. And I find I repeat myself a lot on the podcast in regards to this when I talk about some of the MMA personalities that I've had on my show. There is a perception of jiu-jitsu and MMA in particular, and I think it's a false perception based on the early conceptions of the sport, where it was kind of like human cockfighting or human dogfighting to a certain extent, where now even it is a lot more disciplined, it's a lot more sanctioned. And I will tell you that people that participate in jiu-jitsu, MMA, any type of martial art, or anything that's difficult like that, tend to be some of the most well-balanced, kind-hearted people that I have ever met in my entire life. Why? They get that aggression out in other areas of their life, so they have it together in the arena of the day-to-day.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, man. I see it. I'm around it. I've experienced it, just living in it, even in Albuquerque and getting to know some of those guys that John Bones Jones, I've never met him, but that whole entourage and those people, some of the sweetest guys, because they have nothing to prove. They have zero to prove. My first class out there, they were just like, if you want to fight someone, come fight me. You know what I'm saying? You don't, we're not here. We're not bro dudes. We're not doing the tap out t-shirts. You know what I'm saying? You want to fight, bring it on, but don't be stupid with these people, the students, you know what I'm saying? And the funny thing is, every dude, I'm going to make sure I'm saying a factual statement. Every dude that I've met in MMA, 100% of them have, like you're saying, are the nicest guys. And maybe it's because they know they can kill you, but they are like, come train with me sometime, Michael. And when you meet Sage and you meet Alex, they're always smiling. Always smile. And of course they already know, like, here, I'm going to go for your foot. I see you're off this. I'm going to choke you like that. But they are always happy and exciting because I just don't think they have anything to prove. They're just kind of like, you know what I'm saying? Like, we could just get along. And so, but they are, what you're saying is like, I've never seen a more self-disciplined bunch. The amount of water they drink, the amount of all of this stuff, and it transposes into their real life and their real jobs because they do not give up. They are relentless in their pursuits of their business practices. You know what I'm saying? They're still getting up that early, even if they're not training for MMA. They're working on their business. They're going to succeed. So I just suggest for anybody out there, man, please find something you get this excited about. And it's not about martial arts, but it is about, like, man, these are some great workouts and what helps your body, helps your mind. And it's almost like it's very cyclical. You know what I'm saying? Yes. Like it all affects each other. The spirit affects the mind, affects the body, affects the spirit. It's all just, and you just feel so peaceful, But then when you turn to things like alcohol, and then that makes you sleep in, and then you missed your first appointment, and then you don't get business, and now you're struggling financially, which leads you to more drinking, and then more of that. It's just like, it's the reverse effect happens, and now you feel, you're not confident anymore because you're not doing well in your job, so now you're alienating your friends, whether it's because of again. And everybody tries to make it sound so complicated. It's like, no, just do one hard thing. And then stack that. The next do one other hard thing. And the next week, just do one other hard thing. And before you know it, it's just like the confidence you will exude in business, in your personal life, in your relationships. It's outstanding.
Where you're at now with your everyday life and this sense of self-awareness, your faith, your job, this sense of servitude, because I had a thought to myself today. People typically look at their sense of servitude and sense of gratitude as two totally different things. Like, people look at it as servitude is hard, but gratitude is easy, when it's actually the other way around. Gratitude and sincere gratitude is actually the difficult part because it requires a sense of humility, where servitude is just doing something simple and doing something kind and being an act of service to your fellow man, woman, child, whoever. So taking all the culmination of all of these things, how does Stephen perceive himself these days versus back when, 2005, when I first met you?
I mean, I'm still that same individual. It's just manifested in a way different outlet. I hope when people look back at the band Anberlin, I hope that they saw someone who was trying to be inspirational, who was trying, whether that's lyrically or conversations or the amount of stuff that we did for nonprofit organizations. I'm not sure if I've met another band that was that focused. I mean, we worked with everything from cancer patients to Habitat for Humanity. I mean, all across the spectrum, we just tried, to write love. We just, we may not have done it perfectly, but we tried to raise money. We tried to raise awareness. We tried anything that we possibly could get our hands on. World Vision, Children's International on that 2019 tour. So we just tried. That's the best we knew how to do. And so that same individual exists here in the inspirational, trying to make sure that I create a change in this world. And that starts, for me, obviously with my family, that's my first ministry. And then secondly, at Grace Family Church, That to me is, something I'm passionate about, just church planting in Clearwater, Florida, and have an amazing staff, an amazing congregation. And now we're spilling over to the community. We work with organizations like Pineapple Project, which gives homeless people, when they get into their first house, we completely furnish it. Sleep in Heavenly Peace, we build beds for children sleeping on floors, and we go into their houses and we see them sleeping on floors. We build their beds and we walk away knowing tonight that kid is going to have the most amazing sleep, maybe of their entire life. And so I want to continue that. I hope I do that in another 20 years. I hope we do another podcast where I'm just like, hey, we're still working with Habitat for, and I don't know what it's going to be. But it's just, I want to make sure that I kind of continue that on. So no matter where I'm at, I want to be an inspiration to those around me, kind of constantly pointing back to love God and love others. That's what this is all about.
My usual wrap-up question, I kid you not, and you already answered it without me asking, as I ask every single guest, what's your advice for making the world a better place tomorrow than what it was today? And you just summarized all of that so eloquently and so perfectly. Stephen, I hope you do come back and do the podcast another time. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I am glad to call you a friend.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate that, man. I really do. It's been a pleasure, a privilege. I love these kind of conversations. I hope that people walk away, not learning more about me, but hopefully learning more about themselves, hopefully seeing a reflection of who they are, who they could become. And I'm, and not me. Don't try to become me, become the best version of yourself. And for me, that's, that starts with Jesus. That starts with your family. And that starts with you dedicating your life just to, making a difference. I think, someone more eloquent than I said, it's about leaving yourself in the heart of men, and I think, and women. I think that's so important, of just kind of like, who can you inspire to create better versions of themselves as well? And so whether that comes through servitude, whether that comes through loving on people, whether that becomes dedicating your life to nonprofit or to your faith, I don't know what that looks like for you, but it is so crucial that each one of us makes a difference in this world. Because, we are here. We are a short parenthesis of time. We are just, but who can you inspire this next generation and the next people coming up to lead this world? So that's very important to me.
I tell you, I just had this conversation yesterday with a younger band, and they were talking about what their goal is in the music business isn't the same of what yours or mine might have been when we started. They want to create a community around what they do. It's not about getting a record deal. It's not about tours. It's about creating a movement and community that people can rally behind. And I think you and I covered that quite well. And that is kind of my purpose with my podcast, is creating this parasocial relationship with people and having them find the best version of themselves through it. So, man, I thank you once again for doing the show. The world is a much better place with you in it, my friend.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate you. Thanks for letting me be on the podcast.